I'm not quite so intimidated myself. I had the last 2 years to myself and used to like to think that I could hold my own against the black face of night. Whatever did occur last winter scared the pants off me, though. I had recently leased a new apartment, a one-bedroom but otherwise charming little complex in the downtown area. The building itself was older, but it was affordable, and I didn't care if the walls did groan a little. I worked the second night shift at a restaurant that was open 24 hours, so I was used to walking home in late hours of the night. The streets were always deserted at 2 a.m., but on this evening they felt different. Stepping out of the diner, cold air stung my skin. Shadows beneath streetlights lined the way in front of me, long dark lines. I was 8 minutes from home, a direct line down Main Street, turn into the part of town where my apartment complex was located. I wrapped my arms around my hoodie into me and stepped out. A little deeper within, I experienced the most delicate feeling of being observed. Not a thrill of devilish fancy, but a crawling up the back of my neck. I accounted for it to myself by a sense that I was but weary. And then the stairs. They were behind to begin with, tap-tap following me on the sidewalk. I slowed my pace like I was checking my phone, and the footsteps slowed down as well. My heart was racing. I looked around the back, and the sidewalk was deserted. I picked up speed. The sidewalk kept pace with me. I tried to comfort myself that it was paranoia. Maybe it was an echo. Maybe someone else was walking home alone. I did know better, though. At my street, barracking, I double-checked. It's where I've spotted him. There was a man somewhere behind me, 20 or 25 feet behind me, half concealed in the shadow under a street lamp. Dark, tall and still, but the slouching shoulders, the scowl at me, gave a spasm of terror to my heart. I wheeled on my heel and I ran. My apartment house was just a block away. I could make it, and I could hear the voice which lifted the hairs at the back of my neck to listen. The guy was cursing. I had no idea he was cursing about anything, but his voice was bitter and close at hand, in good intention. I did not turn and look over my shoulder. I ran. By the time I had reached my building at last, I shook so violently that my hands were useless and my keys jangled, not able to operate. I rammed the key into the door and opened and closed the door behind me. My heart pounded, gasping for breath. I pushed forcefully on the door and listened. Nothing. I waited, then crept through the peephole slowly. Nothing. The street was empty. Perhaps I'd never even heard it. Perhaps I was going crazy. I gasped jagged breaths and locked the door, turning the deadbolt into the lock. My apartment was chilly, but something I'd prepared myself for as adrenaline coursed through my body. I closed the bedroom windows and got back into bed, where I lay utterly exhausted. That's when I heard it. Tap, 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 slowly on my window. I was stiff. There was a 2-story apartment building in my complex, and that was where I was staying. Absolutely no way in the world anyone was beyond my window. Knocking, though, persisted. Slowly. My brain was going crazy. Do I look? Do I act like I didn't hear it? My entire body was yelling at me to be silent, but I had to know. I turned my head and looked in the window direction. What I was witnessing petrified me to the very core. A face against the window. A grinning, gaunt face with vacant eyes directly on me. I was paralyzed. Couldn't breathe. It was the face of the street man. But how? How did he get in? And as if to verify the very thoughts going through my mind, press a finger to his lips. Shh! I thrashed on the bed. My heart, terror-stricken beyond recognition, pounded within my chest, and I would pass out. I tried to reach for my phone, but the shaking was so ridiculously, horribly extreme that I couldn't dial, and the face vanished. I did not sleep that night. I cowered in the corner of my bedroom, ball of knot, phone clutched between thumb and index, waiting for the dawn. And when it arrived, I cautiously peeked out through the glass. Nothing. No sign that anyone had gone through at all. Later in the day, however, on my apartment outside, I saw something awful. One print. Wet. Blur on my window glass. To this day, I have no idea how he managed to get as far as he did. I have no idea why he would do this. But each night, after I close my doors and look out my windows, I ask myself the questions. Is he still out there? Just sitting around the house like the rest of the others at the weekend on a Friday night, I sole occupant of the block and self-styled monarch of loneliness. My mum and dad would take me in at home at weekends on a Saturday and Sunday to look after watch. I looked after not at all. I was 18, yes, and snobbish at being inconvenienced on without something having been accomplished of with some rubbish films shoehorned in blockbusters. The house had been so quiet hush I hadn't even noticed my parents were there unless they weren't. The quiet nights had been mine. There'd been safety in being there in the dark, alone in bed, to darkness of the house, alone. Tonight, but not tonight, here. Round 11 or so, gaping and sitting and sitting. Second quality out, creaky creak of old wood porch steps, tingle in chest, flick of short little flick and tight. Quiet, but not. Hiss of fridge and rumble of old cars on zip-up street out here. All I have hyper-overactive imagination playing tricks on me, I told myself. Relax. Something terrible that you'd hardly even blink when you'd stupidly wasted the night before, home alone on a Friday night, stoned out of your gourd on the living room sofa with Saturday afternoon double features at rock-bottom prices. And they were too the bottom they had reached. The slow nightmare pile of pebbles on the sill outside my bed window. I was wound tight. My angular, tight body had been wedged in tightly tensed balls of spasm-hunched muscle in the far reach of spasm eruption because part of the back of my head had hit against the creaking gap to the back of the window. Blinds came down over panes, yet something or somebody was out back behind them. Somebody had penetrated my territory. I gulped hard, phone still in my ear. I had reached out to grab the phone with my hand, but my arm was still extended out in front of me to the phone when my desk phone rang up with an unknown caller ID when I reached out to grab it. I did not appreciate that. I just sat there for a minute and attempted to reach out again. Hello? Nothing. And I was there and I could plain simply drop the phone on the floor here and let ring and ring and ring. A raspily breathed sigh, "You shouldn't be alone," rasped harshly down the line. The phone flashed in my face before I'd even begun trying to stuff a word into words. My stomach curdled acid bitter with fear. Harassments and jokes, him a moron frightening brains out of me. Door-to-door instructed me on that one trick. Scared up, frightening half, sneaking up quietly to the front door and believing the door was open. It wasn't, and windows. But paranoia got the best of me. I gripped fists in something the next handy thing was a baseball bat and prowled in the living room, wooden as a pincushion. I wasn't snorting, I was standing, and the pounding. 3 gigantic stab bangs on the front door. I nearly lost the bat, thudding heart thundering round so violently that I am sure it roared out of my chest. I didn't blink, I didn't inhale. I'd let myself in a bit of perspiration and supposed hello and welcome. Who is there? I'd used too much force. Nothing. I wasn't opening. I was going and coming, perhaps by peephole, and glanced around. Front porch light on front porch and stairs, and no one to be found anywhere. Room where one had been. And rolled over backyard sensor light on. Roll over on own knees, figure in backyard. Ran to back window and crawled under blinds quietly. Trees, wine-blown initial impression only. And then, like a sledge, suddenly, it hit me. A darkishly tall figure strangely silhouetted on treetop lines against the light slant under porch. Stand still, waiting. I wasn't breathing. Who is this? So big, so stiff, white face, black. Shaking, stiff terror gripped ribcage, and scuttling feet. Sideway, over backyard fence in my backyard, away from home, out into black. I didn't have to be there wondering what I would have to do. My hand enveloped the phone and my fingers danced as I punched in numbers as I dialed 911. The phone rang once, twice, before a live human voice answered.
911, what's the emergency?
Someone's in my house, I screamed hysterically. They were in front of my house and they were in back of my house.
Get on the line. Police are coming.
I hunched there in my own place, Couldn't stretch myself out flat onto the place that I was in, stuck between corner and wall. I peered out the window, out the back, but they were nobody. Good, even better than that, they were elsewhere, just standing there in the dark. Time would just simply always just keep taking and having like a never ever actually ever really ended time ball. Then, after I'd already somehow convinced myself that it was okay, this thump by the back door just suddenly. I shouted it half out. The doorknob creaked and groaned once more, whatever was desperately trying to come through it from the other side. I held tight to the bat, scarcely even realizing I was breathing hard, and then, with the same suddenness with which it began, the opening and closing ceased. I had been flinging open my front door wide before anyone ever knocked on my door twice. I felt spasming knees of relief, grappled close when wailing police sirens rent the air asunder. Blue and red light flash on glass tower offices as policemen wave after wave poured into town, shrouding the block in remorseless drone. 2 officers were on watch at the house, a third patrolling. No break and enter, no prints on around outside. The outline of a figure, disappeared. The officer followed me and my truck. The police officers regarded each other. "We will patrol this street tonight, but if anything else happens, you call us immediately." I nodded, recognizing they'd never arrest them whatsoever. No sooner had I left than I'd closed my doors and windows, and my door again all tight shut up, as paranoia edged onto the periphery of my mind. I did not sleep last night. I'd sat rigid on my sofa, bat clutched firmly in hand, sitting very still to weather whatever, if anything, wanted to be heard. Nothing was done about this. The following morning I discovered something that made my public spine shiver. There were 2 fairly distinct prints together, alongside my window, under my bedroom window, and they'd also made a print to the left, over there on the grassy windowsill too. Whatever had lain in my front yard had been there for a dad-burned awfully long time, longer than I'd realized they'd been in front of my house. I wasn't that sort of person to get frightened that easily. I lived in a small town where nothing ever occurs, and as such, there was never night loneliness that resulted in staying awake. All this would be turned upside down once events actually went wrong on the night. It was late November and cold. I'd worked late at the office. The town slumbered, stretching out beneath a soggy fog that beneath its damping cloak dripped street lamps like a strand of breadcrumbs. It was only a mile to the office, and other than that, otherwise I would have trudged home. It was on the low side, and good to get some exercise. It was almost strangling the air that evening, at least. Something in the hushed quiet compelled the city to be put into standby mode. I pulled my jacket tight about me and made for home. While I walked past one of the main streets where I am used to staying, I noticed something odd. A body on the ground beside the low street lamp at block distance. At first, I thought that this would be one other baby pram on another evening, but after I had observed the rigidity of myself, they were board positioned. They converged together with their backs to the radiance of light of the incandescent bulb. I departed in routine protocol, but crept along for paranoia. People sat in groups on the sidewalk. They may have been waiting for a ride, or just sat down after a walk. Something was off. I accelerated, wanting to get past them as soon as possible. But as I attempted to pass them, the figure made a very deliberate step in front of me. My heart pounded in my chest. The step was too deliberate. No accident. I ducked my head and simply ran on and more quickly, as if I hadn't even seen him. I panted hard because keys were stuck way down in my pocket. At the corner for the street lamp, I flipped over the heart. The man wasn't anywhere around. My stomach did flip-flops. I turned around again, searched around, but the sidewalk was empty. They hadn't disappeared that quickly. Arm hairs stood on end. I turned around again and sprinted the remaining distance home. By the time I did, at last, arrive home to my apartment building, I felt in my pockets for my keys, trembling. I slipped indoors and shut the door, drawing a breath of relief. Perhaps I was indignant. Perhaps more was being concealed by the fog than was revealed. I had dropped the bag, shrug-off jacket and was racing to my bedroom. I was about to bend down to switch it on when I noticed something that sent cold blood through my veins. The closet was open. I never have it like this. Never. Cold sweat trickling down my whole body. My head spinning a million miles per hour, wondering what I would say I'd be holding it, but way in the back of my mind already knowing. Someone had come into my apartment. Crept back slowly, quietly, hand reaching out for phone when I heard. Breathing, shallow, gasping, coming from the closet inside. I would have done something, I could have done anything, if only I wasn't so scared. I would have attempted to run, scream at the very least. I wasn't even able to move my own body out of the way, though. There was the jagged edge of darkness, where the doorway had been torn open, and I knew whatever was standing on the other side of the doorway was looking back at me and waiting for me to come to them. Summoning what little energy I had, I threw myself out of the apartment and slammed the door shut. I locked it up and shook with trembling hands holding a kitchen knife, dialing 911. The operator remained calm too, but I hardly heard her. "There's someone in my apartment," I panted, "in my closet." The police came in time, but the seconds crawled like an eternity. When they stormed into my bedroom, my closet was empty, but of course, the most improbable hiding spot. My bedroom window latch had been left a fraction open, and the shivering, biting gust of cold air that flooded in froze my worst fears. The burglar who was hiding in my closet escaped. The police searched the block and came back empty-handed. No fingerprints, no shattered lock, nothing. Like he'd disappeared. I didn't sleep the first night. Couldn't sleep. Any creak, any sound the wind would make, my heart would jump. I slept at friends' places for a few nights, too scared to be alone at home. So I did end up finding a new place to be. I just couldn't find anyone to listen to me who had experienced it when I was... My closet time tonight I'm writing has been circulating, keeping me company for a completely absurd length of time. And it is this fear that I despise most. The question of if they were anyone, whether and when they ever returned, and just sitting and staring, waiting.